Still not catching up, huh? All right, we're going to have to work on that. That's fine. We'll just have to somebody needs to put a message on Facebook to let everybody know. So, that's all good. I believe you were good then? We're ready to start? All right, wonderful. Welcome to Bible study, not by the fire. We were going to have it down by the fire, but then I was told that if we're down there and their kids, them rowdy people in that next room, like Sam, are over there, they'll be really noisy and we won't be able to hear. But we're here. Is this on? We're good? Can you hear me now? So let's go ahead and get started with Bible study tonight. Reverend Chavez, will you pray, please? Amen. So we're in the fifth commandment of our series of boundaries and blessings. I believe everybody has the outline. We kind of give a highlight outline to what we're going to follow after tonight. Let's just dive right on into it. I don't know how far we'll get. I don't believe we'll get done with it, but we'll just see what happens. But the fifth commandment really deals with families. In a time when things are pretty chaotic, the structure of the family is really threatened, but it's very important. And so as we look and go through this, we want to kind of take what was put out there at the time of the law, but mainly focus on families now and the structure of families, and to honor this command as the first 2 points. Maybe if I could have one of those, that would be good, but I don't necessarily, that would be a good thing. But the first 2 points that are on there, the command part, the first part of verse 12 of chapter 20 is honor thy father and thy mother. Thank you. Ashley. We got that. Shut that off. There we go. And part B, and this is kind of the part that really gets overlooked. We always hear the honor thy father and thy mother. And then there's a promise that goes along with this, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And as it's shared, we'll kind of go through this. As it's reiterated in Leviticus. It's also reiterated in Deuteronomy. It's also reiterated in the New Testament, a lot of these commandments as well, and we'll look at them. Ephesians, we'll get to that part. But I guess the question that comes in as you grab a hold of these texts, you look at them, and you just take that first phrase, what does it mean to honor your father and your mother? Where does that fall into place? What does it mean to honor your parents? And certainly it means different things at different times in your life. What's it mean to small kids, children? To Elliot, what does it mean to honor his father and his mother? And what does it mean to, all the other ones abandoned us and went into the next room. That's why we may have to, a lot of the parents were saying, hey, they need to be in here for this week. And, well, maybe they'll get a taste of it tomorrow. This is maybe the warm-up, and we'll get into the teenagers tomorrow to finish it up, right? But what does it mean when you're a teenager? What does it mean when you're adult? What does it mean when you're 30 or 40 or 50 years old? And it still means to honor your mother and your father. And so we'll kind of dig into that a little bit. When you're that, I think a lot of this really plays true and really reverberates when you're talking about growing from that time of preteen, becoming a teenager, and there's just a lot that takes place in your heart and your mind, and realizing that you have a responsibility to God. A lot of times it's dished off as a teenager, a young teenager, that I can just, you're placing all the responsibility on your mom and dad. But as you become a teenager, and it's a parent's responsibility to teach that teenager that, hold it, you're at an age, we call it the age of accountability, right? You're accountable for your actions. You're accountable to God. And it's your responsibility to respond and to help them to understand what that comes. That realization sinks in, that great epiphany, right? Whoa, hold it. I have to answer to God, not my parents. They certainly answer for a lot of it, but I actually have to answer to God. That's why you find when kids in children's church, they get in that 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they begin and they pray for salvation. They have a realization because they've understood the gospel. They've understood, they've been there, and they've learned a lot of the scriptures, and they can respond. But the command as it was given, as they were there at Mount Sinai, was to all people. It wasn't like, oh, hey, we just want the elders to come. Remember how it was first initiated? All of them were there at the mountain, and God spoke from the mountain and started rattling off these commandments, and they were a little overwhelming, and to a point where they said, Moses, why don't you go up and hear the rest, write them down and tell them to us? Because it's that point of responsibility. It's that point of answering directly to God, and that's a danger that even happens throughout history, even in today. A lot of times people, they'll dish off on the church or dish off on the pastor and say, well, he's going to answer, or he's the go-between, or I confess to a priest, or whatever may be the case, but we all answer to God. And so that's where we want to put that in. The core of, as we look at this statement, honoring God is not hard to understand, to honor, to obey your parents. I think we kind of have an idea of what that means, but let's give the definition of the word honor. Kabod, there in the Hebrew, means to, in a sense, means to be heavy, means to glorify. It means to ascribe value and worth to something. Value and worth, meaning to honor. And that's not just to your parents, but you said many times, love, honor, cherish your spouse, honor your parents, things like that. Means to respect them or to hold them in high regard. To put it into a straighter context, we can go to Leviticus. Chapter 19, verse 3, ye shall fear every man his mother and his father, and keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. So, same commandment, but instead of using the word honor, the word fear is put in there. But it's still comparing, using the same context, reiterating the commandments. Fear, honor, similar word used when commandment is stated again here in Leviticus. Also, in Deuteronomy 26 and 19, and to make thee high above all nations, which he hath made in praise and in name and in honor, and that thou mayest be an holy people unto the Lord thy God, as he hath spoken. Same word that's used there when he speaks about honor. Exact same form. It's used for fame or praise or speaking well of. It's the enhancing of the reputation of another. To lift one up in esteem, to honor them. Just to give some background to it. It has the idea of wanting to please, wanting to obey someone in a relationship. 1 Samuel 2 and 30, wherefore the Lord God of Israel saith, I said indeed that thy house and the house of thy father should walk before me forever. But now the Lord saith, be it far from me, for them that honor me I will honor, and they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Now this verse comes there when Eli was the priest there in 1 Samuel, how that they had allowed the sons to despise the priesthood, had not esteemed or honored God. And so he said, those that honor me, I'll honor. But those that lightly esteem me or take me lightly, that's the same way they'll be treated as well by me. So they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. And that's what they had done, is they had forsaken worshiping God and honoring God. So that's the idea of honor. It's the idea of valuing, respecting, obeying, speaking well of, lifting them up, giving weight to their position and to their personhood. So, second part of this, why did God give this command? And we can look at this in 4 parts. This command is different from the first 4 commands that we've had, right? It's different in the sense of, in the first 4 commands, they were all towards God. They were all of the commands up to this point, no gods but the true God, no worship but authentic worship, don't abuse my name, remember, and remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. All those commandments were directly to God. This is kind of a transitional commandment because now this is showing us how we interact with one another. How we interact with one another. And this commandment marks that transition. Honor God by honoring others. So it's transition, still showing honor to God, but the focus here is the family, and the family is, when we focus on that family, honoring one another, in turn that honors God. So the family is the foundation for all other human relationships. Really, that's the way God established it, how that family unit is how that God placed a pattern, just like Israel was a pattern, the family was a pattern to show that honor and that respect, and how that we honor God is how that honoring, here honoring mother and father all through life, that gives that respect unto the Lord. So the family unit is very important to the stability in our life. That's why in our day and age, throughout the last decades, throughout the last centuries, the devil has always tried to erode the family unit and try to destroy it and count it as nothing that's particular or special or that we show honor towards. But it's very important that the family unit gets honored. And we're going to bring that out a little bit more. The family unit is not a group of people who decide to learn and want to live together. There's a few, we're just going to debunk a few things that they've thrown in there today. The family unit is not people who can adopt a baby even though they're both the same sex. That's not a biblical family unit. I don't care what YouTube says. I don't care what the media says. I don't care what the teachers or the administrations or the way that they've orchestrated it through our government have declared it, that it's okay. The state passes a law. They've allowed it to happen, but that's really not what the Bible speaks about a family unit. The family unit in Scripture is very clear. A mother, a father, and children. More concisely, a husband and a wife and children. Just to clear that up, right? That's the biblical family unit. A monogamous relationship committed in covenant before God together. This is the family that has the divine design, designed by God. Now, there are times we understand that this doesn't always hold true. There's a time when one of this mother, father, husband, and wife, one may die, and so therefore you'd have a single parent. We also know there's other circumstances that come where there's single parents, and we know that is not desirable. We understand that, but there's times when there's circumstances beyond our control. And I'm certain most would rather not raise a child by themselves, but they just pray for God's grace and God's strength to help them have all the wisdom and nurturing and all the help that they can get to help raise these children. That's where many times the church does come in, tries to help out and structure this up to where there's a family unit. So we understand that. But he sets a principle for us, just like he sets the principle of worship, the principle of the Sabbath, the day of rest, where that we honor God. But the family unit is the core. It's the nucleus. It's the glue of humanity. Now, many of you have heard the name James Dobson, his teachings. And he says, as the family goes, so goes the nation. As the family goes, so goes the nation. As the fabric of the family deteriorates within a nation, so the nation deteriorates. And you can look through history that way. You can see where the family unit deteriorates within, you can go all the way back through Rome and Greece and Medo-Persia and Assyria, all these different things, to where the family has less of an impact or a meaning. Therefore, in time, the nation erodes within itself. Those that have the Roman Empire collapsed within itself, just kind of melted away because they did not hold the family unit true. So that's why he puts right here the 5th commandment, honor your father and your mother. The foundation, so we have the foundation of the family unit, the foundation for respect of authority. The idea of honoring has to do with respect or obedience to authority. It sets this precedent. And I know that respect towards authority in our nation has been eroded. It gets torn down. It's to where that anything that has authority or stands for what's true or what's right, they try to break that down to where there's chaos. And when there's chaos, well then therefore the devil can put all kinds of policies, try to get people's minds twisted and change resting the scriptures or taking away from the truth. And so he loves chaos, he promotes chaos, and therefore he erodes the authority that the Bible sets. So when there is no obedience, when there is no authority, it makes it very difficult for children. If they don't learn respect and obey a parent that they can see, how will they respect or obey other human authority? If they don't get that respect or that authority within the household, how will they even be able to respect other authority, the police or governments or whatever may be the case, or even the structure outside the house with grandparents, things like that, or even God? How will they even have a respect towards God? They just kind of like, whatever, if there's no respect or authority in the house. I know we live in a society that no one wants to take responsibility, and maybe that is why people do not step up and want to be the father, want to be the mother, want to be the responsible individual that'll say, yes, I made this baby. I'm going to take responsibility for this baby. Fathers and mothers. And I know we live in a sad society where many fathers have faltered in that. They don't step up. They don't even pay. You think, get them to at least pay. And you're like, come on, man up, be a man, be a leader, be what the Bible calls for. So it's God's design. God created a structure of authority and moral responsibility. I know these are huge words. They're not. We just don't like them because they put weight on us. And we already talked about honor as being weighty, having weight, having substance, not taken lightly. And so the structure starts with the stewardship of parents. We've talked about being a good steward of what God's given unto us. Well, that falls right into place as being a steward, a parent. I'm the father, you're the mother, and don't forget you're the child. And that's what we're establishing tonight. So, as our Father directs us by His boundaries, they are out of love. The boundaries are out of love. Boundaries are set in place, not as a club, not to be bludgeoning over, but they're set in place in the context of love. Boundaries set up love, because if a child is longing for boundaries, they really are. They like the boundaries. They want the boundaries because they know where that they can go and where they cannot go. It's when they're confused about boundaries to where that I don't know, I don't understand, and sometimes they'll push the boundaries to find out, to make sure they're still intact, to push to find out, well, is that love barrier still intact? And we'll get into what that would be in just a little bit. But I know it's difficult, especially in a culture where no one wants to grow up and do what's right. I remember hearing that children's church song, I don't ever want to grow up. Two little kids singing, I don't ever want to grow up. Why? Because you can't play, you got to work all day. The other kids, I don't want to grow up either. And they just go back and forth about growing up. And I think we have a lot of adults in our society that don't want to grow up. We have a lot of people that don't want to grow up. But you have to grow up. You got to grow up. Parenting, I have it here in bold letters, parenting is not for cowards or for the faint of heart. You got to be what God would have us to be. Newsflash, parenting is not being, and this is one that I don't know what books they put it in, or parenting books. I've never read books like that, but parenting is not being your kid's best friend or buddy or pal. oh, we're just best friends. We just hang out. Be a parent. Be a parent. And I take that in a little bit of a context, because many times I look back at my childhood and I cherish it, and I had a good time growing up on the farm. I had a lot of responsibility, and some of this will tie into that. But when they ask me, those questions, who's your best friend or whatever, I really have to go back and it's kind of contradictory to what I said. I have to put my dad down there, because we worked together all the time. We were always out there, but he didn't treat me like his buddy or his friend. I knew who Bruce was. I knew what his 10.5-foot boot was. I knew what that meant. I knew what his belt meant, and I respected it. I respected it wholly. And once I got to a certain age, he really didn't have to use it. He just had to give me that look. And I knew what those muscles could do. You got my attention. The Latin word for parent is an interesting title or phrase. It is in loco dia. In loco dia, meaning you crazy old man. No, that's not what it means. It means in place of God. That's in Latin. The Latin word for parent means in the place of God. So that parent is representing to that child that authority, God. And so it's in place of God. Oh, I don't want to do that. Sorry, you're a parent. That's what the Latin derivative of the word parent means. That God has placed a parent in the home, in the place of God, so that a small child would understand the holiness, the love, the compassion, and the authority of God in human flesh for a period of time. God has put that parent in there to represent God to that child, to help them to understand who God is, to help them to honor God. And so that's the parent's responsibility. Thirdly, the other foundation that's put in place is the foundation of human development. Now, you can go to all different psychological studies, but every psychological study in the world will tell you that the most powerful socializing agent in the entire world is the human family. That which establishes the socialization agent, how they interact, how we interact with one another. The best way to do that, or the best way that it happens or affects us, the most influential thing that affects us is the way we were raised, whether good or bad. Some of you may be looking back in your past, and I'm saying some of these things, and some of you have these wonderful thoughts of childhood and growing up, and some of you are like grinding your molars and saying, wasn't a great thing for me. We're going to take this stuff, both sides of this, because it has an effect. Secondarily, so primarily, that's what the human family, that sets our social boundaries, how we interact. Secondarily are our peers or our friends. Also the years of experience, things that we've gone to. Life teaches us lessons. And then there's other things like traumatic experiences that can dominate a person's life. And those are just a few things. I'm sure there's others, but primarily it's the family experience that impacts a person's view of themselves, how we look at ourselves, our view of others, our view of life, our sense of being loved, what that means, how we are loved, how we love others, what we perceive love to be, our self-esteem, our sexual identity, the moral values that in the socialization process, moral values, what a value is, what we count valuable, how that certain things are established in our upbringing to where that we don't cross certain lines because that's been embedded into our upbringing by our parents. So Some, they try to rip them all down. That's the mantra of our society now. Take all boundaries, all borders out. Just wander carelessly and free falling in a sense, or just going any direction. You just do whatever you feel, go by feelings. But we know the Bible, what the Bible says about feelings or thoughts. How that in Judges, how it said that every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And what that led them to, being totally away from God and not following after God. And so, but that's what the devil's allowed, or been able to wiggle his way into our school systems, into our country, because some of it we can take that because the church hasn't stood up and shouted louder and wasn't willing to fight the fight, whatever may be the case. But we've got whatever platform we have to shout it from the mountaintop. Anyway. For some of us, our childhood was positive, and yet for others, it was negative more than anything else. It had a negative impact on us, not a positive impact on us. On one hand, positive affirmation that you can do it. You can make it if you try. Your parents were in your corner, cheering you on, helping you out, saying, hey, you can make it happen. If somebody else can do it, you can do it. They had that. They had your back. You had parents that loved you and were willing to sacrifice for you. And you got those types of compliments or words of encouragement. But on the other hand, there was an affirmation, but it was another type of affirmation. It came along the lines of saying, you're a loser. You're no good. You'll never amount to anything. You're supposed to be this. Why are you this? We've taught you better, and they don't come off, and they've never learned to talk to their children to where that they come at them in a positive sense. It's always negative. It's always you've been taught better, you know how to do better, but you're this, and your grades should be better than that. Or parents, they did sorry in school, and they had a sorry upbringing, so therefore they lord over their child that he's going to be the best athlete, he's going to be an A student, you're not going to grow up like me. Well, how about letting them grow up like a child? Help them be what they can be, the best that they can be. There's a proper balance in that. And so many have been raised within those realms, and if it's been a negative realm, some may fight their whole life trying to recover from that. Especially if they never hear or they never are approached by the answer to life, Jesus Christ. They've never been saved. They've never heard the Word of God. They've never heard the words of life to where hope comes in. If they've never had that, then hope just kind of stays down here at the bottom, and they just keep fighting, and they just keep saying, I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be a way out. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. But something down on the inside. We're still created in the image of God. And so there's still something on the inside. There's something that tickles the back of the brain and says, there's got to be something better, and because there's something that causes us to draw near to God. Somewhere, sometime, some way, whatever the circumstances are. But it can be a long fight. It can be a long fight. And so this recovery, this time of influence, the way we were shaped, the way that our emotions are, it helps. We have to get through this. And that's why it's so important. It's so important for everyone, not just me or the ones that are licensed ministers or whatever title you want to throw on it. Everyone has and should be keeping on preaching, keeping on teaching, keeping on sharing how that God intended it to be. God intended it to be. Where there are men and women, just like we shared the other night and last week when we talked about how that he said everything was good. It's good, it's good, it's good, except for when man was alone. He said that's not good. Then man's alone. Go ahead and he created Eve to where that there's a couple and they got married. And I know many times people have been punched in the nose by marriages, or they've been around marriages that weren't good or not good. But you know, there are still marriages that are successful. There's still people that are happily married. Some people are like, yeah, whatever. show me some men that'll step up. Be that. But I know some folks that have been married quite a few years, quite a few couples in here. Folks have been married quite a long time, faced life, faced the things of life. There are still men and women that will step up and say, hey, I'll be and do what God wants me to be. I'll be what my spouse wants me to be. And that's why when there's anniversaries and things like that, we're like, good job. My wife will readily say, give me a pat on the back. I put up with him for 30 years. So, but with this negative and positive, that's why it's so important that your kids get an amazing balance of firm boundaries that create security, and where they get overdoses of affirmation and love and encouragement that produces significance. And I commend all parents that, you see kids that have a lot of spunk and a lot of life, and they just keep on charging ahead because they've been given an opportunity to have what they do have. I see them little fellas of Brenda's, man, you can't hold them back. They're going and going and going. She's like, but she keeps on keeping and going. See, every kid is always asking two questions. Two questions. Can I have my own way? And do you love me? Can I have my own way? And the answer to that question is always no. No. And do you love me? The answer is always yes. Yes. When these two things are kept in balance, kids will be secure. They will have a healthy sense of significance and will know what it means to submit to authority. There's nothing wrong with that. Submitting to authority. Our flesh within us, even when I say those words, some people's toes curl. Submit to authority. Like, grates against the flesh. But when you get saved, you yield to God. You yield your will to the Lord. And if it's still grating you and things, you're in the back of your neck, hair starts standing up, you're like, hold it. Maybe you need to yield a little bit. And if that's the place or something that's going on in somebody's life and you're thinking about getting married to them and they can't submit to anybody, they're not going to submit in marriage like they're supposed to because they have to submit to Christ. That's what he tells us. We have to submit to Jesus. We have to submit to him, husbands to wives, one to another. All right? There is a command structure. So, this command, as we went through this, we have the foundation of human relationships, the foundation of respect for authority, the foundation of human development. And let's move on to this next portion here. What does it look like to honor our parents? And I think we'll get this first part, and I don't believe we'll get to the teenagers. Maybe we'll keep that for tomorrow night. To honor your parents when you're a child. I honor my parents by, and I think that's written on there, by obeying them. A young child honors their parents by first and foremost by obeying them. And we can go to Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. First part there. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, and I have in parentheses there, which is the first commandment with promise. That's written on there. Yes, you have it up there? Yes. So it's in their scriptures as well. But it's amazing how that's in there. It says, and I didn't really even notice that until today, how that it's honor thy father and thy mother. And then he puts that little statement there, which is the first commandment with a promise. There's a command. There's all these commandments, but this one comes with a promise. When you honor your mother and your father, he's talking about, hey, there's a blessing that comes with this. And then he says in verse 3, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. So it's a blessed life, being well with you and live long on the earth. Notice, and then so in verse 4, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. He's saying, and this is, the commandment that's there, he brought it out. He specifically brought out fathers. He didn't say parents. He didn't say mothers. Here's one that's to the dudes. You fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, because dads have a tendency of doing that, poking the bear a little bit, making a kid mad instead of teaching them in love. Getting them upset, bullying them. I'll toughen them up. I'll make them a man. And that used to kind of be kind of a mantra. That's not very far removed. Some of us may have had dads like that. But he says, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up. Ektrepho. Ektrepho is the word. Bring them up. Nurture them spiritually, emotionally, physically. Create an environment. Create the right environment in your home. How? Be the leader. Be the example. Hey, follow me as I follow Christ. And you teach in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. A child is to obey. We're going back to verse 1. A word obey here is hupo okunu, or akuo, which comes from or has the same basic where the word acoustics or acoustic comes from. To hear, things you hear. Obeying and hearing going hand in hand, like an acoustic guitar, that kind of ties in here. That's where we get our word acoustic or hearing. Hupo meaning to be under, which ties in with the word obedience, because how can we obey if we do not hear properly? So that hearing and obeying go hand in hand. So how can we obey if we're not listening properly, if we're not hearing properly? Some people have, I was going to say kids, but some people have a t-shirt permanently, or it's marked on a hat or something, does not play well with others. Because they're not willing to submit, they're not willing to give, they're not willing to, and sometimes that's why it's good to put people or kids in a group environment, to bring them to church, bring them to school, to where they have to play with others. And many times toddlers don't play well with others, but in time they learn to play well with others. They learn to share. Some parents don't teach the basics. Tell that kid to say thank you. Tell that kid, right? What do you say? And you're like, sometimes you're the other person. You're like, oh, don't do that now. Why do you have to teach them now? But it's in a family structure. Aunts get in there, grandmas get in there. They don't let that kid. I mean, when I was growing up, the kid didn't get away with that stuff. He didn't say thank you. He better say thank you. I mean, you didn't get past that. That was just. But is that still there today? Not so much. Not so much. You have kids that they don't do the thank you. They don't have that respect. Say yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That what? What are those words? They don't even bless their food. Bad acoustics. We say that in here. We have bad acoustics, but some people have bad acoustics. They don't hear. Cannot hear very well. The picture of obedience is that your little children, your children, need to be under the hearing of your word. Well, I just don't say a whole lot. Why? You admire a father, a teaching father, a teaching mother that nurtures their children in love and teaches them the things that are important in life. Respect. Now, one that I heard of, and this really resonated with me, a child will show the same respect to their parents as the parents show to each other. As a mom respects the dad, in the same way a dad respects the mother, that child sees that and respects that parent. But they break that down and they call, hey Larry, hey Fred. They don't have terms of respect in a sense, and so that child just doesn't even have a little bit of a barrier, a little bit of where they show that level of respect. And not saying that they have to have specific terms of respect and, yes, Father, yes, but a level of respect there. So we're talking about obedience, and we obey under the hearing of the word. That means they obey when you speak. The child obeys when you speak. Children obey your parents. That means do what they say. And so there's 3 characteristics. We have 5 minutes. 3 characteristics of obedience that would count it as obedience. Number 1, if we're counting your child obeying you, you're supposed to be talking to the kids, not the parents. Well, they're not all in here, so I'm talking, that's the way it works. You're the one that teaches that child obedience. So in order for it to be called obedience, number 1, it has to be immediate. It has to be complete, not partial. Hey, it's not like, hey, go clean your room. And they go up there and they clean their room, and they do about 60% of it. Is that obedience? No, it's not obedience. That's just partial. And that doesn't count as obedience. And also the last one, this could even be you're like, what in the world? With a good attitude. That's really obedience. Immediate, complete, and with a good attitude. Just like that kid, and that dad made him sit on that chair. And he wouldn't sit down on that chair. And he said, sit in the chair. Finally, he sat in the chair. And then somebody came by and said, it's good you're sitting in the chair. I'm sitting down on the outside, but on the inside, I'm standing up. So he wasn't obedient. The number one thing you need as parents to teach your children, you teach them early on. And by the way, when you start early, the better for them and the better for you it is. Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Start early, start often, and stay on it, right? You have to teach them to obey. The battle of obedience, there's a battle that takes place, and you have to win the battle. Parents, you have to win the battle. Both of you. Not just mom. Some of the parents, some of the dads, we get off. Mom's really good at it. She's a little strong. She's around them all the day. She can't, not have them obey, but sometimes it gets repetitive and over, and they just kind of tune mom out, and dad has to help out as well. It has to be a team effort involved, right? You got to get on the same page, and I know some parents aren't on the same page as how they discipline but the bottom line is, somehow you have to look at it and say, is this kid on the path to obedience, or is he on the path to rebellion? And I know we got a bunch of terrible twos in here, and we've got various parenting styles, but I'm just giving you some biblical reference, and I'm not saying these things for you guys to go home and have a knockdown, drag-out fight about how you train up your child. But I do want to provoke thought, and for you to stay diligent, and to help both. Say, hey, I need to do it as well. Sometimes you have the kid will be just over there messing up, disobeying, just not even paying attention. Mom's working on it, and the dad just like oblivious to it. He's just like, he doesn't even register. Is our 5 minutes up, sir? You keep digging right in there where I'm at. Oh, no, we got 2 more minutes. Okay. You have to teach them to obey. The battle of obedience. You have to win the battle. You have to work at it. The effort early on will pay dividends. Now, we can call all these different battles. You have the battles in the house and trying to keep things straight, and you pick your battles sometimes. I know you don't have a little rigid soldier that completely obeys. I know there's a balance in there. But then you take it outside the house. You have the battles in the church. You have the battles when you go visit people. You have the battles in the grocery store. I saw one the other day. I was like, oh, wow, look at this. I was standing in line, and this lady had this boy in there, and he was probably 5, 6, right in there. How old are you, Elliot? 5, about that age, right in there. He was standing the grocery cart was there. He had a couple of items that he had maneuvered Mom into putting in the cart throughout the store. But then they were at the checkout, and there was, they have everything out there for kids to look and, wanted this. And he was all about wanting something else. And he was just starting to go to tantrum type mode, almost there. She just looked at him and said, "Do you want this stuff here in this cart? If you want this stuff in this cart, you stop right now. You quit it. You get yourself right." I mean, she stepped and set him straight, really stern with him, and he wanted to just do the tantrum. He was, you could tell this battle had been done before, but Mom was winning. She didn't give in. She held tough. I was like, "You go, girl. You toughen it out." And it is. It's not, because you can establish it, but you know that, and there's other things. I mean, there's all kinds of advertising. They don't advertise to you about restaurants. Some of you parents haven't gone to the restaurant you wanted to go to in the last 5 years because your kids pick them all the time because they've heard all the restaurants and McDonald's and all the advertisements are to them. The Happy Meals, all this stuff. The kid picks it because the advertising is toward, they know who rules the house. And you hear little kids, and you hear the little ones, the little prima donna, little girls and all that. Oh man, she's got daddy wrapped around her finger. She rules that house. Sometimes it's pets. Pets rule the house, or the kids rule the house. But you have to maintain control and keep the boundaries in place. Ask yourself, who's really running things? Who's really running things? The kids or the parents? And I did mention, and we'll end with this, about going to other people's houses. That battle. People you know, people you respect, people maybe even you just met, but you don't want your kid to be recognized as a terror or disobedient brat. And so there's different battles that take place. How you respond, or it comes to near the end. Sometimes it's the interaction through the evening, and kids can't get along. But maybe it's near the end, and it's about the habits, the way you've trained your child about, hey, it's time to go. And is it tantrum time right then? Is this like, it's time to go. Woo! Instant. Hey, it's time to go. It's time to clean up. And that's a battle you have to win. And you have to get intimate, meaning up close and personal. Help them to understand what you say is what you mean. What you mean is what you say. And that's the way it is. But some of them, they'll warn over and over and over and over, and the kid's winning. You're not winning. And so you have to establish that by whatever it is, and it shouldn't be a yell. It shouldn't be, you have to train them and help to understand that you are the authority. And if you have to get right in there and get right alongside, whatever it is, however that you have to get the wheels moving in the right direction and establish a precedent and don't back off of it, because sometimes you can get it established, and when they get off of what you've established, it's not usually their fault. It's usually your fault because you've let it slide, and then you've let it slide, and then you've let it slide, and then you're back to square one. Does any of this make sense? I know it does, because I was a parent. My kid's 23. I'm done with that. But not really, because as a pastor, you deal with children. I love working with children and the challenges and the victories in working with children. And I know it's not easy, but it takes effort and it's work. And it certainly helps when both parents are rowing in the same direction and saying, hey, this child, we've been placed in responsibility by God to represent God to that child, and we need to do the best that we can. And so we need to work together, we need to pray together, and we need to bring them. That's why we encourage when we go soul winning, bring them to church and see what we can do to help, because most parents are overwhelmed. At least they could get a break for Sunday morning service. Send them down. children's church and get something from God. So with that, let's pray. Brother Diaz, will you pray, please?
Lord,